what I want to talk about this week is kind of continuing some of the themes of things that we've talked about in recent weeks. There's been a lot of turmoil, turbulence, changes going on with Google in particular, and one of the benefits, normally I do this on a Tuesday, these live streams, but you might have noticed it's Friday, and one of the benefits this week is that it means that we're coming after Google I.O., which came out earlier in the week and has given everyone a chance to, I want to say digest, but maybe we'll say panic about the different changes that are going on, and we'll talk about how that is working and what I think about that. So frustrating that I can't get the LinkedIn one. Oh, I can't debug this live. I'm just going to put a comment. Give me a second. I'm just going to put a comment on saying that folks can see it over on YouTube because having LinkedIn live difficulties. Catch the stream on YouTube. Okay. Okay, right. So, yeah, I don't know if you saw Google I.O. this week. There was this wonderfully risky intro, and I'm just going to share my screen and show a screenshot of this. And this was the inspiration for calling this week's stream. Is Google getting less serious? Evidence for the prosecution is I present to you this wonderful screenshot of the intro thing. I'll talk more about this in a minute, but it's a risky intro. I also think some risky actual moves. So I'm going to come on to the details as what they called Search Generative Experience, SGE, has now become AI Overviews. And is this maybe a sign of shipping things even though they're not ready? And I've called out a few times on these videos that it sometimes seems like we want things both ways. We want to have our cake and eat it. This criticism has arisen in criticism of Sundar, but it's also come up in specifically around new product features. I mean, folks at Google were the inventors of the transformer, the original technology that now underpins all of the large language models coming out of OpenAI, Meta, all the others. And yet Google was the last to market with some of that stuff. And so there's been a lot of criticism of Google moving too slowly. But then when they move fast and they ship things that are maybe less ready, maybe riskier, they get criticism for that too. So damned if they do, damned if they don't. But I think it is certainly interesting to say, is this going to be a sign of potentially taking more risks, shipping things that aren't necessarily quite ready? But anyway, yeah, I think this is kind of a metaphor somewhere in here. The thing I'm showing on screen. So this was the DJ. It was a TikTok guy, YouTube guy. I'm not quite sure. I guess it would make more sense if he was a YouTuber. I'm not actually sure if he is. But I love this moment where he takes off his rainbow-coloured robe to reveal a second rainbow-coloured robe underneath. It's pretty great. But yeah, let's talk about some of the actual SEO side of things or search side of things as well. So, as I said, Google has now said that they're going to be calling these things AI overviews and rather than search generative experience. And I think the kind of critical thing that came out of Sundar's presentation was this line saying that he said that we see that the links included in AI overviews get more clicks than if the page had appeared as a traditional web listing for that query. And if you dig into the whole talk, he actually says more than this. He says Google gets more usage. So people carry out more searches and engage more, click more in general, and this is fascinatingly at odds with the narrative that's coming out of the SEO industry, which, broadly speaking, is panicking. I think it's pretty fair to say about a lot of this stuff. I can see why there's a lot of nervousness right now. I personally think the SGE side of things, or the AI overview side of things, is somewhat overblown. I'll talk about why that is, but it's coming at a time when there's other nervousness around, there's been spam updates, helpful content updates, core update, as well as the reputation abuse penalties and so forth. And so I think in the context of all of that, I can see why folks would be nervous, and especially in the context that some smaller sites or some media sites in particular have been really struggling with the combination of helpful content spam and reputation abuse. And I think probably the most sympathetic of those is some of the helpful content updates, which I think, not to put too fine a point on it, are not necessarily always prioritizing the true helpful content update. So yeah, what does it mean for SEOs? Well, I think what we're going to see is that these AI overview are they're going to become fresher. I think fresher and more real time. I think history has shown us that Google has, I think, internalized this, has learned that there's a huge importance to fresh and real time data. We've seen this going all the way back to crawling, indexing, going back to the Google Dance, through to more real-time indexing and crawling, through to Caffeine Update, which was the infrastructure that enabled more real-time updating, things like PageRank, things like Panda being batch updates and then becoming more real-time. All of these things have been a trend towards more real-time. And so I think we're going to see all of the AI stuff become fresher and more real-time. I think we're also likely to get some data out of this in one form or another. So I think this could look like, I think in the early days, it's going to look like analytics data. At least this is coming from, these are visits that come from Google. And so in the same way as whether it's a map pack, a local pack, a product listing, any of these things, the referrer is Google. So it will show up in analytics first. And apparently there's some integration with Search Console straight away, although I think, if I've understood correctly, not a differentiation of when it's an AI overview click versus just a regular web search click. There's been this kind of, I don't want to say sop to the SEO industry. I don't know if you've seen this new filter where you can just request web results, which kind of throws you back to old school template links, which I would be surprised if we see that get great traction. I think that's I saw Danny talking about it being launched as something that people have asked for a long time. My suspicion is that's quite niche, and that we actually don't see that get a great deal of use. And probably what's going to end up happening is it's going to end up being under invested in, not a great experience, not prioritized in the user interface, and therefore normal, real users are not really going to do that, I don't suppose. But what these two things mean, because as it gets fresher and as we get data, that essentially means that we can test against it. So we can start trying to figure out, how does this work? Why does it work the way it does? What can we do as site owners, webmasters, marketers to get more visibility and get more business and do better in a world of AI overviews? And I put this out on Twitter and LinkedIn during the week. I don't think anyone knows, and I would include myself in this, I don't think anyone knows which sites are going to win and lose as a result of this, whether it's going to be net positive or net negative for organic search traffic as a whole. We have our guesses, different people guess in different directions. What I am predicting is that whatever happens to the broader landscape and whatever happens to any individual site, from that point onwards, it's going to be testing against this stuff that is going to give any individual site the best chance and opportunity to improve from there. And that is not necessarily the same as getting back to how things were before the AI overviews. You can't change history. And we also, none of us can affect Google's decisions. So Google is going to make their own decisions about what they roll out, what they integrate where, how they evolve these services. But for whatever decisions Google make, we want to make the best possible ones. And that's where testing comes in. And so I think and then the final point is that I think the growth of more artificial intelligence in search results, including explicitly in overviews, but not only in overviews, also in rankings and in generation of other features, is going to mean that SEO becomes less by the numbers. And this has been a broad trend that has been true for decades now, is a move from more kind of checklist oriented best practices and information retrieval thinking towards a more opaque and obscure set of ranking factors. And this is basically a big part of the thesis behind why we're doing what we're doing at SearchPilot, where we believe that we need to test in order to understand how any individual site thrives and grows in this environment. So 1 and 2 mean that we can test against it. 3 means we need to test against it. And so this is, I'm feeling like we're in a good position to help our customers and big websites thrive in whatever this new world ends up looking like. Because what we're hearing a lot of at the moment, when I talk to our big customers and other folks in the market, what I'm hearing is that organic search for most websites, certainly most big websites, is still the biggest channel, but it is threatened and it's uncertain. And that uncertainty leads investment in it to be threatened. And so what I'm hearing is that many organizations are now unsure how to hit their organic search targets. And this is actually driving a lot of our new projects. It's helping brands integrate SEO into their experimentation programs, which are often quite mature. A lot of folks have quite built out advanced experimentation programs across other channels, media, conversion rate, user experience. All these kinds of areas are often quite well built out. But the SEO has historically been less integrated into those areas. And so what we're finding is that folks are reaching out to us at SearchPilot when they hit some kind of challenge. And that could be uncertainty, it could be a step back in performance. And it tends to mean that there's a gap. Right? The folks come to us saying, look, our goal is X in revenue from this channel this year, and we're currently tracking below that. We need an initiative to close that gap. And testing is often the initiative for a lot of the folks that obviously we end up speaking to. And so, yeah, a big part of that is integrating into folks' experimentation programs as a whole. And so this is probably a good time to give a shout out to a webinar that my colleague Sam Nemza is going to be delivering in, a couple of weeks, which is actually part 2. So if you sign up here, you'll get part 1 in a recording, and then you'll be able to join live on the 4th of June when Sam is going to be talking about what makes a good experimentation program, how strong hypotheses help you validate the impact of SEO changes, and how to analyze those results. As part of this SearchPilot Masterclass series, there's also a bunch of content on our website that covers this. So there's you can get the replay of the first webinar, as well as this article here by Sam. You can see nice big scroll bar, tons of detail about how to build out an effective experimentation program. And this is the content that he's going to be talking through in these webinars. So save your seat for the part 2 of Sam's effective experimentation webinar. So we talked here a lot about, I started out with Google getting less serious in a kind of playful sense at the I/O conference. The second sense in which I think that changing seriousness has played out, and maybe I'm playing on words too much here, but is this idea of releasing things before they're ready. And I think AI overviews quite clearly not ready, and we can talk a little bit about some of those risks, but there definitely are risks. We're seeing incorrect medical information, incorrect legal information, verbatim information displayed in the overview from websites that have been penalized in the main search for other reasons, which seems to have ethical challenges to it as well. And I think Google is going to get the blame for these AI overviews in a way that they don't get the blame for links to websites, or actually even for featured snippets, both of which are quite clearly other people's content. And I think, notwithstanding the ongoing discussion about whether stuff generated by a large language model is in fact other people's content, I think this is going to be seen as, this is Google. Google is publishing this stuff, and Google is telling you these things. And if they're telling you something that isn't correct, then Google is the one that's on the hook for that. But I actually think this is kind of a good thing. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But there is another way in which Google feels potentially less serious right now, and that's in the succession sense. I love you, but you are not serious people. Best line in the show, I think. There's just been quite a lot of weird comms from Google, I think, recently. A bit of a mismatch between the internal narrative, external posture, official line, what the webmaster liaison folks are telling us. Some quite defensive responses in many cases, I think we've seen on social media in particular, which contrasts quite starkly with that line from Sundar of, in general, we're seeing improved user experience, improved user happiness, searchers doing more searches, clicking on more results. Like, where's this disconnect coming from, and why are they not able to put a consistent front on this? And right now, Google definitely seems to be losing the webmaster PR battle, and I don't know how that's coming across with normal folks outside of industry. A lot of the regular media coverage seems to have been neutral to positive, as far as I can see. But then there are some areas. There was a Wall Street Journal article the other day that was more critical, and I think that this is conflating multiple different things, because this is not just the AI overview, search generative experience stuff. I think that's a bit of a jumping off point for some of these conversations, but actually an awful lot of time seems to be getting sucked up in discussions of the spam, helpful content, reputation abuse actions that are going on. And, these are targeting a number of different, I've called them vibes in past weeks. So, not enough Reddit in the search results. So people are appending Reddit to their searches, followed by too much Reddit in the search results as that dial got shifted just conveniently in the run up to the IPO. AI content on the web, and Google having to figure out how to navigate whether to rank that or how to rank that. And then, of course, AI in the SERP, where in the search results, which is the search generative experience, now called AI overview. But I called this out specifically. I called it out on Twitter that there's this fascinating, this is literally a 1,000-word article that is in fact one Twitter reply from Danny from Search Liaison. And this is a huge amount of effort to put into a reply to one particular thread on Twitter. And I think feels like it backs up what I'm saying about this kind of weird defensive posture that seems to be going on right now. So I actually commented on this with some annotation. I thought maybe I'd just kind of talk through this. I actually think the first two paragraphs of this are excellent. And in many ways, it could have stopped there, or could have been a link to that content being published on a official blog. I'd like to see more blog knowledge base, official repository of the answers to these things type effort, and less of the reply and rapid fire Twitter stuff. It's kind of just interesting to me. I was looking at this today, that if you look at the volume of broadcast on Twitter from Search Liaison, we got 14th of May, but very quickly you fall back into 5th of March, right? So 2 months ago, and that looks like, okay, fine. That's the kind of frequency that this works at. But you dig into the replies, and that is huge amounts of effort going on, tons and tons and tons of replies to individual threads, and with individual new content. It seems all of these replies are individual. Occasionally there's a link to another reply, but all of these are just typing out these huge volumes of content. And I would love to see this organized and structured a little bit better. As I said here, I have been struggling to keep up with the official comms, with all these like almost the same messages coming out from all these different places. And this is where actually I think actually funneling some of this stuff through a comms and PR department would make a ton of sense. And then what I'd love to see on the Twitter game is kind of that helpful pointing to things that are the canonical answers to this stuff, rather than seeing it all kind of typed out again. I don't know, maybe that's personal preference, but these two, this is great, I think. A great explanation of the difference between algorithmic spam action and a site that's just not ranking as well as another site or as it used to, just because the algorithm sees it that way. I think that's useful. And saying that a lot of folks are confused and feel like they have a spam action when in fact they don't. And this discussion of the potential solutions to that, I think, is really interesting. It's really useful to see the trade-offs that Google's trying to play with here. And in particular, they're talking about the fact that it'd be very difficult to call out algorithmic actions in Search Console because it would give too many pointers to folks who are trying to abuse the system in Google's eyes. And yeah, I mean, these are all, I'm sure, live product discussions inside Google. I personally feel like some of that is a little bit overblown. I think there would be ways to do some of that stuff without tipping off the adversaries in quite the same way, in particular by making a differentiation between cases that are really egregious and cases that have just tipped over that threshold. But anyway, nonetheless, this is a valid debate, and I think it's really useful to be exposing some of it in public. But it was these two green sections that I highlighted that I thought were, well, I didn't find them misleading. I don't think I think I correctly understand what's going on here, but I imagine that there are some of the target audience who might be hearing something different here. And this line, "there's no way to manually lift an algorithmic action," is a very interesting line. There is no way. It's quite passive. There is no way because Google has chosen not to have a way. Side note, if that's even true. And I wonder, I do wonder whether there in fact is a big green button that goes next to the big red button. So we know there's a big red button. We know that it's possible to delist a website or dampen its rankings or push it down however far in the search results. And to the extent that Google does not have the inverse, does not have the green button that says, don't have this subsystem, this sub-algorithm run on this site, or disregard the negative score that comes out of this algorithm, or even just boost this site and give it more visibility across these kinds of searches. I think that may exist, but if it doesn't, that is an editorial choice by Google. And this article, I think, or tweet, I don't know what to call it, it's more than a tweet, but it's effectively an article written in someone's replies, is there's no way to manually lift an algorithmic action. There's no button we could push that says this website is actually more useful than our automated systems think it is. And to the extent that's true and that there is no way and there is no button, that is simply a choice, and it is a choice that they could make differently. And I actually would prefer to see that message more clearly. I'd prefer to see that said explicitly. We have chosen not to ever do this, which has been said in the past, but I guess it goes a little bit awkwardly alongside the existence of the big red button, which we know does exist, because in the past that's been messaged as Google saying, we don't do things that don't scale, we do all of this with algorithms, we never special case different websites. And I mean, we know that's not true, because they're literally talking about the special casing of what they call the reputation abuse penalties, which is that this is that idea where what's happened is typically big media sites have taken white label whole subdomains, typically whole site sections that are all around. I mean, the big one was coupons in this most recent update, but we've definitely seen it for dating sites and other kinds of listings and classifieds and so forth. where it has no real connection to the brand itself. There's often no editorial connection and no oversight. It's simply saying, this is going to rank because it's on our big, powerful domain, which has introduced all kinds of other questions around the existence of domain authority type metrics inside Google as well. But anyway, what I'm getting at here is that I think there is a lot of, there's this very scattergun kind of comms, and I think right now, I don't know if it's helping. I do feel like it's adding to that sense of chaos and disruption and turbulence and uncertainty. And I'd love to, this is why I think publishing some of this stuff in a stable, one right answer type place, and then referring folks to that content might help just bring that temperature down a little bit and help things out. But I'm going to end this with a bit of a contrarian take. I think quite a lot of good things are happening right now. I think going all the way back to where I started, whether it's this dude, or whether it's this stuff and Sundar talking about the benefits that come with AI overviews, my contrarian take is I think this shows an organization that is finally taking risks again and shipping things that are clearly not ready. And I think that might be needed. I think that might be a good thing. And as I said earlier, I think we should be clear that they are taking risks here. They're taking, in my opinion, legal, reputational, and probably regulatory risk in essentially publishing some incorrect medical information we've seen, some incorrect legal information, verbatim information taken from penalised websites, these kinds of things. These are risks, but I think they are calculating that they need to move faster. They need to ship these things in a less polished state because they've been too stuck and not reaping the rewards of the inventions that they've been making. So overall, a big part of the reason I remain bullish in general is that, firstly, I don't think search is going anywhere. I don't think search behavior is changing that rapidly. I think it's a huge, huge part of many, many, many people's lives. So I think search is going to continue. Google sits at the top of that tree, and Google makes money from ad clicks, fundamentally. And I think the best path that they have to more ad clicks is not only just more searches, and it's not only a greater proportion of clicks going to ads, which is kind of the conspiracy theory or the received wisdom. But I think that the best path they have to more ad clicks is more organic clicks. And this might sound counterintuitive, but if a greater and greater percentage of all clicks become paid, that puts more and more pressure on the user experience, the regulatory side of things. And a big part of the reason that search ads have been so successful over the years is that they were kind of the first native ad where the ad unit, the link, is the same thing as the organic unit. And I think they know that. And I think that's why they're rolling out these things, because I think they have seen that they grow queries, they grow organic clicks, and that opens up these monetization opportunities. And so, yeah, just to say that again, I don't think the way that you grow ad clicks is to grow them at the expense of organic clicks. I think the biggest path to winning is more searches in total, more clicks out in total, more, in other words, more organic clicks. And with that, you get more opportunities to have more paid clicks in there as well. And so, yeah, Google is absolutely doing this despite the uncertainty and turmoil it causes to SEOs. I don't really care particularly about SEOs, unfortunately, or even about small websites, and particularly about small websites' performance relative to big brands. But I do think they care about organic search as a whole, and not just about paid search. I don't think they've got to the point of saying paid search is so important that they would damage organic search to improve it. And I think they'd be very foolish to kill that cash cow. And so where I specialize these days is in big websites. So if you work on a very large website and you're feeling the uncertainty, feeling the pressure, then don't hesitate to get in touch. I'd love to chat. This is where we can help. And also, I think we should all take a beat. We have seen this before in the industry. This kind of uncertainty and disruption is not that dissimilar to the Vince update, which prioritized big brands, to the Panda and Penguin updates that attacked that perception of declining search quality and came with collateral damage, often to smaller websites. It's not that different to the scraper penalties of the early 2010s, that look quite similar to the reputation abuse penalties that we're seeing today. So students of history say it rhymes. I think we're going to continue to see search and Google thrive, and I think seeing them take some risks is actually possibly a good thing. So I'm going to wrap up there. If you're interested in more of these, head on over to searchpilot.com/live. You can fill in this form to get a demo of SearchPilot, and you can get some other resources that will help you out in the meantime before next week. So some of our customer stories, an introduction to how SEO testing works, access to our back catalogue of test results, and you can sign up to our email list to get new test results in your inbox every other week. I generally go live on Tuesdays. I know it's Friday today, so normally join me at 4:15 p.m. UK time on a Tuesday, which is 11:15 a.m. East Coast time, 8:15 a.m. West Coast time. I think I'll be back to the normal schedule next week, and hopefully I'll also get LinkedIn up and running. So sorry for some of the technical difficulties today, but I hope everyone has a great weekend. Take it easy. Bye.